Welcome to Intentionality with Paul Kempff, the podcast and YouTube channel where we explore the possibilities and opportunities that can be created by a more intentional life. If you like what you hear, if you like what you see, please subscribe, please follow us, please share on social media so we can reach more people and impact more lives. This is episode 36, and this is going to be a special episode. I'm very excited to welcome on the couch a guest that is in at least two ways very unique. First, it's our first doctor that we have on the couch. Not a medical doctor, but we're going to find out what he has his doctorate in. And secondly, published author. This is his book that he has brought to the couch this morning, Our Future World, Dynamics, Opportunities and Challenges, co-authored by Pieter de Villiers, Lizette de Villiers and Jan Niemand. So, a very warm welcome to my next guest on IWPK, on the famous blue couch, Dr. Jan Niemand from Rescript Consulting. Jan, thank you for agreeing to be here. Welcome.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Jan, we have known each other for a while, but I'm not really going to say we know each other well. I think it's time we change that today. I would like the viewers and the listeners to find out more about you as I learn more about you. Start with who you are, what it is you did your doctorate in. What are the things that people might find interesting about Jan Niemand?
Brilliant. So the who I am bit, that can lead us down a few rabbit trails, but let's say the result of my studies actually will reveal a lot about how I function, how I view the world. Okay. So I view reality actually as a constant flux of interconnected nodes and modes and networks. And it's actually very difficult for me to stick to one topic or theme that I'm interested in because I always end up rabbit trailing, divergent thinking all over the place. So I initially started my my degree in Old Testament, trying to understand how metaphors are used within the ancient Near Eastern mind to convey meaning. And I took a look at the Psalms for that. And it morphed into cognitive linguistics and taking a look at how our brains process language, and then language in turn shapes our brains and how we make meaning of the world. And it resulted in a view that the Book of Psalms, as it is currently, we have in most of our canon Bibles, is actually a step-by-step mode of processing national trauma, which for the ancient Israelites was the Babylonian exile. And if you work through the Psalms in a step-by-step and systematized way, it actually acts as a catalyst to work through collective trauma and how it is put together. So what started out as a very simple little topic ended up as a monster, and I systematized this into a few chapters, and there you go, I was off. The verdict is still out whether the practical application of it is useful, but we tried that as well, and it seems, yes, if you structure metaphors and song and these types of things in a certain way, it can actually help people process grief, trauma, negative emotional states in a very constructive way.
Okay, hold on. I've got a few comments there. Firstly, you used the word simple somewhere in that description. It sounds anything but simple to me. Secondly, there's no question about it. This is going to be an interview just from your first answer. And third, this is the first time that I've heard something out of the Bible being described and being used in that way. So really fascinating. But just before we go more into these things that you've studied, these things that you have found, that you have written on, tell me something more personal about yourself, just so we can get to know you a little bit better.
I have a secret outlet. If I don't do it, my personality fades, and it is ultra trail running. So yes, I choose a path into the veld somewhere, get hopelessly lost, and then navigate back with my smartwatch. And if it ends up being 30 Ks, then so be it.
Okay, I like it. It's something that we've actually had a discussion about.
Yes.
Let's be honest about it. You've actually invited me to go with you on one of these team trail endurance running things. I've just been too scared to do it. But it's something that I think we must explore a little bit more after the podcast and see if I cannot get the bravery from somewhere, the courage from somewhere to go and do it with you. How did you get into this? How did you discover this?
Step by step. And it's the nature of conquering things, right? You start out small. I was introduced to running by a friend literally 10 years ago. Started out with just finish 3 kilometers, 5 kilometers, 7, 10, and before you know it, you're buying gear to go and run over a mountain because, well, it's there.
Yeah.
And I can do it.
What's the longest run you've did?
The longest continuous run was the Hobbit, half of the entire Amatola Trail. So it's about 45 kilometers, but over mountainous terrain. It did not go well with me for the 2 days after that, but that kept me busy for about 7 hours. It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Okay, I don't know if everybody will define that as fun, but it's certainly interesting.
Yeah, well, you're high on endorphins afterwards too. It's absolutely amazing.
Okay. Just one more question before we get to the more technical stuff. What is it that Jan is passionate about? What is it that gets you up in the mornings, that puts a smile on your face?
It's a simple thing, but it can be a bit of a task to accomplish. And it is facilitating people or a person to a point where there is an aha in their eyes. It is absolutely brilliant to see someone participating in a conversation, in a workshop, whatever, and you see the person or the people go, oh, wow, I can work with this. I live for those moments. Love it.
I've actually experienced as well. We had a lunch on a Friday afternoon. I think it was a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
We had some really interesting discussions, and there was certainly one or two moments where I said, wow, that makes sense. Now I get it. Now I understand my wife a little bit better. I'm just kidding. But yeah, that's amazing. That's the thing that you're passionate about. Love it.
Insight. Love it.
All right, let's talk a bit more around why we're actually here and the topic of today's episode. You and I have discussed it. We've decided together we're going to call this episode number 36 Intentional Leadership Beyond Just Wanting to Be a Leader. So my first question around that for you is really, what does it mean for you to be an intentional leader?
So Paul, the problem that we are actually facing in if you read up on leadership, and especially more academic type of leadership studies, although you will find it in popular press stuff about leadership, is we've got to be honest. Leadership as a social function worldwide is in massive crisis. In fact, there's a widespread distrust of most a large part of society in any authority figure, any person that actually claims to be a leader, and there's almost as if we expect this person will have some form of an agenda. There are always skeletons in the closet somewhere, and it's a genuine phenomenon. They literally call it the worldwide leadership crisis. And it has to do with zooming into a type of leadership that we call the great man leadership approach, where this powerful, smart, intelligent, rich, whatever, usually male, interesting, not always, but usually, make of that what you will, amass a following of people, and the effect of their leadership on society is it's divisive. It is, fear-mongering would be a strong word, but it creates a sense of anxiousness, a sense of anxiety. There's always an enemy, and there's always a sense of a very strong in and out group focus. We here are these types of people, and anyone coming in from the outside, they're dangerous. They're going to break the status quo. They're going to mess up the economy. They're going to do all these horrible things. And it actually becomes a bit of a personality cult. And then usually what happens is these people's strong leaders, a bit of the skeleton of the closet starts becoming known to the public. And that creates an even worse division, because now the followers go through a process of cognitive dissonance, and they start defending the person, the leader, even though the facts are evident, but they were involved in the scandal, in this and that. No, you need to understand. And it's almost a bizarre rationalization of staying committed to this figure no matter what. Almost has these weird religious tones to it. And I was just fascinated on what is going on here. And it's, having said that is the context. So that
if I may interrupt you, sorry for interrupting you. I
Yes.
just want to check something. So obviously when we talk about leadership, we're talking about leadership in general.
Yes.
It's whether it's in business, it's in our communities, it's on a
Political
government level, political level. The crisis you're talking about, I see so clearly in so many countries in the world.
Yes.
I see it in our own country in leadership. We see it especially in the United States at the moment.
Yes.
The type of leaders that we see that wants to lead that country, it really is a crisis at the moment.
Because ultimately, the moderate middle, most people in society are not polarized.
Exactly.
They're not radical. They not necessarily fundamentalistic. Most people just want to have a quiet, safe, secure life. They want to have contact with their loved ones. They want to associate with whom they want to associate with on a social level. And they want enough to spend to enjoy their lives. It's a very basic need for most people if you want to take a bell curve distribution.
But they're being polarized by the leaders.
That's the problem. So you actually find now that many people in the USA, but in other countries as well, saying, I have no idea who to vote for because the choices don't represent me at all, but those are the choices. That's it.
We've got to be a little bit careful here, because if we start talking politics, we might be here for a very long time. And secondly, I need to be careful because I do have a few followers, a few subscribers. I don't want to alienate somebody and lose a few of those. So maybe what we must do, although this is a fascinating discussion, is maybe just take another step back. And instead of just talking about intentional leadership, why don't we start off by saying, what is leadership in general? What does it mean to be a leader?
Now, this is part of the answer.
Okay.
Because we have to be honest. The type of leadership that sees the light of day, and usually in the public space, not necessarily politics, in business as well. Let's go offshore again, not to alienate anyone. The Enron crisis. It's fascinating that Enron, this major energy company, ended up deliberately misleading people, and it was a leadership crisis. It was a leadership failure. So it's getting to an answer of, okay, so how can we be more intentional about the type of leaders we raise, we develop, and who end up leading, is you've got to understand what is leadership. And there we need to take a step back and say, we make use of sociology and anthropology. Leaders always will arise in human society because most humans, the norm, are scared of uncertainty. It's as simple as that. We want someone who is willing to be certain on our behalf.
And that becomes the leader.
And that becomes the leader. And it's a very powerful function to say, but I don't know, but this person looks like they know what they're doing. They look like they know where they're headed. The sad part, though, is many studies show us that what do you think, Paul, is the number one character trait that results in a group of people spontaneously choosing a leader?
I would love to think it's things like integrity or trust, but it's probably something like personality or charisma or...
You know what it is?
Tell me.
There's a study, I can send you the article. The amount of words spoken per minute.
I struggle to believe that. That is crazy.
It's not crazy. It's shocking. There were studies done, and they put a random groups of people together, and they asked who will arise as to be the chosen leader. So the group says that person must lead us. They measured for race, gender, education level, intelligence, extroversion, all these variables. The one that came out on top every single time, the amount of words spoken.
Okay, but hold on. I need to just check something here. Are we saying that the leaders are the people that speak the fastest or the slowest?
They speak the most.
Oh, the most. Okay. I was thinking speed of talk.
No, not speech.
Okay.
It's, if we compare them, they are the people that fill silence the most.
That's very interesting.
And it's a thing.
Yeah.
So this is the point. How we choose leaders spontaneously is flawed. If we purely rely on our neurology, how we are wired, and socially, how we choose the strongest, it's desperately flawed, because it's literally, we are suckers for people that speak a lot.
That's amazing. That's such an interesting insight. Thank you for that.
And that's the point. If we want to move to and you can see how this results in the leadership crisis, right? It's not the entire, but it's a big contributing factor.
Because it doesn't matter if they talk nonsense.
It's just the fact that they repeat it often and more often than other people in the area.
Okay.
It's weird.
Wow.
So for us to ensure that we get better leadership results, all of us will have to be more intentional about what type of leader do I want to follow, especially in democratic setups. So they've, in leadership theory now, the previous theory before we had this crisis was authentic leadership, where business schools and leadership academies all over the world said a leader must be authentic and true to themselves and know their own values and strengths and weaknesses and blah. I mean, we did a very similar program. The problem is you can be very authentic and true to yourself and still be a terrible leader. If Adolf Hitler was an exceptionally authentic leader, very true to himself. So there's a movement towards what they call responsible leadership. A leader must realize that in a crisis, in uncertainty, in moral, ethical, economic ambiguity, they are the ones to whom people look for certainty. But the followers also have a responsibility to be, okay, so what are we looking for? And with our modern complex society, we've isolated a few principles by which we can choose intentional leadership.
What are some of those principles?
The first one is you've got to make sure that the leader, especially in corporates and businesses, are not just beholden to the shareholders. They are mindful of all the stakeholders. It's a mind shift to a business does not exist in and onto itself. A business can be a force for good within society if the leaders are willing to think stakeholders and genuinely do stakeholder mapping. Now, the implication is the moment you start opening this can of worms, we run into a bit of a conflict, and that is the bottom line.
Yes, exactly.
Okay? The bottom line imperative, and it looks like the only way that we can intentionally build businesses that are more sustainable for all stakeholders involved and shareholders with a delay in revenue that comes to them is to genuinely challenge this obsession with the bottom line.
That's going to be difficult.
It's going to have to be intentional because we default to the crisis point, and our culture has created a crisis point on that one.
Okay, but that immediately leads me to my next question I have for you. Can leadership be developed, or are people just born leaders?
And this is welcome to the debate and the fight. The short answer is we don't know.
Okay.
The long answer is we suspect that there are people with inherited natural character traits which will in a social system be selected spontaneously for a leadership function. It does not mean that they will be a good leader. It probably just means that they talk more than the other people. Or that at least they provide some form of certainty, security, a sense of safety, a sense of direction in ambiguity. Can it be developed in the sense becoming aware of stakeholders, not just shareholders, being educated on an ethical level so that we can make ethical choices in complex, ambiguous situations? Can we become aware of empathy and understanding other business models than just the bottom line, the race to the bottom? Yes, that can be developed.
Okay.
And it looks like the best leaders that are that don't make the headlines, but who lead companies through exceptionally tough crises are the ones who combine this natural, you know what, I'm called to leadership. So there is this sense of I'm in tune with my values, I'm in tune with all these wonderful assets that I have in my personality, talents, but they are also voracious learners who say, I am going to face such complex situations, I need to constantly educate myself. That combo results in what we call an intentional, responsible leader. It's someone with a philosophy that says, I might not have the answer, but I have the ability to respond.
I like your answer because it links back to a lot of things I've said in some of the previous episodes where we speak about what are the things you have to do to be successful, what are the things you have to do to be a good leader. And a lot of that is around things like continuous development,
Yes,
continuous education, reading, being curious, being inquisitive. I find those characteristics to be ones that I look for in leaders in our business.
exactly. And One of the big things, Paul, is and there's a it's a bit of a bias on my side. It's what I'm interested in, but I cannot help but think that if you aspire to be a leader, or you know yourself to be a person of influence, your time will be well spent to just make a study for yourself of leaders that have failed, get a sense of those case studies, and leaders that actually succeeded. To get a sense of our world is complex, exceptionally complex, and if you are going to set yourself up in a leadership position, you're going to have to be able to deal with complexity successfully. There's no way around it.
I love that. In episode 34, I had a guest, a young man, that really impressed me. His name was Thornton, and he was here on the famous Blue Couch. And one of the things that he did was that he's doing at the moment, he's got these CEO sessions where he goes and spends time with a CEO, because it's his dream to become a leader one day in business, in his community. And what he does is he simply says, look, I just go to the most successful people and I look at what they do and take what they do and try and implement that in my life and my way of doing. And I think that's what you're talking about.
It's a definite way of approaching it. The point is, if you do not expose yourself to divergent points of thinking, complexity is going to win you. And you're going to succumb to groupthink. You're going to succumb to an ideology. I need to say, I know we're not supposed to talk politics, but
That's fine.
An ideology is an oversimplification of reality.
Yeah.
And it reinforces itself, and it will always exclude a large portion of the people you're trying to serve. So it's constantly challenging that, what am I genuinely believing? And you have to be intentional about it, because our brains don't like the unknown. It doesn't like the uncertainty, and we tend to fall back on, as Daniel Kahneman would say, system one thinking, the reflexive thinking of the tried and trusted way. This approach is always right. And I suspect that is a large part of why we're seeing this leadership failure. But people are not willing to embrace complexity.
I've got one more question on leadership for you this afternoon, and that is, why do we need leaders?
We need leaders because I bring it back to sociology and anthropology. It is objectively not so, but subjectively, psychologically, we need someone to take the fall if this does not work. It's a horrible way of looking at it. The leader has the privilege of going first and being recognized, but also bears the risk of becoming the scapegoat if this does not work. And it's a dynamic in our society that I think I don't see it being removed anytime soon. Perhaps AI will start influencing how we approach leadership. I suspect so, but it's very fresh in our society, and it hasn't changed our understanding of how society is built. So, in a very, very crude sense, leaders provide certainty, direction, and I am willing to go for this direction, but also provide the scapegoats for when this doesn't work.
You did also, in the beginning of the podcast, talk about the fact that we need leaders when we are uncertain, so that we can follow them because they give us certainty.
Exactly.
And then you also mentioned AI. Now, just a quick weird comment. I saw somebody the other day that made the statement that he said within the next 20 to 30 years, in the United States, they're not going to vote for a president anymore. They're going to vote for which AI is going to lead them. Now, I don't know if I believe that yet, but I think it was an interesting perspective on AI and leadership.
Paul, this might be a topic for another episode, but the potential of large language models with the capacity like on a ChatGPT or that scale, I think it's going to have profound impacts on how we govern ourselves, how our economies are run, how resources are distributed, even legislation. There was a trial run in a Far Eastern country where a bunch of people were asked democratically what should be done with, let's say, a child sex offender. And they took a large part of the population and said, okay, what are your opinions? Everyone's opinions were put in, the large language model run on it. And the only part where genuine experts were involved was at the very end of the process to get a sense of, does the outcome of the AI cohere philosophically with the constitution of the country? So the entire process of jurisprudence was taken over by AI, purely democratic. There was absolutely no bias allowed into it. No ideology could be fueled. And it seems like the quality of jurisprudence that came out of that process was exceptional. I think we're in for a very interesting time, and I look forward to see how AI is going to help in determining intentional leaders.
Fascinating, but also a little bit scary and exciting at the same time.
Will you take the lead in that?
Okay, Jan, let's move away from leadership. I can guess what the things are that you do every day to be more intentional in your life. Things like reading. I mean, just listening to you here is clearly telling me that you are a well-read man. But what are some of the things that you do every day that you can share with the listeners today that helps you to be more successful, to be more intentional in your life?
It's going to be crude and simple, but it's genuinely that. I understand my own profile, my own strengths and weaknesses. And one of the biggest rules that I apply almost religiously is have a fixed wake-up time in the morning. And it's tough for me to stick to it. I don't form routines very easily, but I have a fixed wake-up time in the morning, which then necessitates a fixed time that I have to be asleep.
Yeah.
And for all the dynamics and craziness of my day and my week, that pattern does my body exceptional good. From a psychological perspective, I sometimes think, but come on, let's bend it a little bit. If I do it, chaos ensues. So that's one of the most intentional fixed points is, even if it's a Saturday, even if it's a Sunday, wake up at the same time every morning.
I can relate to that. And I'm going to guess the time you're getting up is not 10 o'clock in the morning.
No.
I thought so, yeah. In one of my previous episodes, I spoke about Raman Sharma's 5 a.m. club. I'm a huge fan. I'm a fanatic follower. I have at one stage changed it to the 4 a.m. club and then again to the 4:30 a.m. club. So I'm still looking for that magic time. What is the one that really works for me? But at the moment, it's somewhere between 4:30 and 5 o'clock in the mornings.
You inspire me. I manage without much trauma 5:25.
That's not bad. All right, Jan. I always give a tip of the week or a recommendation to the listeners and the viewers. It's a movie or a quote or a book or a podcast or whatever. And I would love it if you can give us a tip of the week for this week.
A book that I found exceptionally interesting and also very helpful in understanding weight and weight management and losing weight. And
Okay, now I'm interested. Yes.
and how our body makes use of fat and not, is the book Burn.
Yeah.
The book's name is Burn. And the moment you understand the science behind how we burn fat, how we store fat, how our bodies are actually designed to function, you relax about the dad bod, because chances are, above the age of 35, you will have a certain amount of fat that you can't get rid of. Embrace it. Your entire metabolism is designed to work in this way.
Yeah.
Fascinating read.
I'm definitely going to read it. I'm a bit disappointed because you are dashing my hopes for still achieving one of my BAGs in life, and that's having a six-pack. So
there is growth in recovery from coma.
All right, Jan, thank you for that. That was really great. Love your tip. Love talking to you. Found it really interesting. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for joining me on the couch.
Thanks so much.
So that's it for this week's episode. All that's left is to thank the production team for all their hard work and efforts behind the scenes. Thank you to our sponsor, the FFG Group, for their support. I firmly believe we are growing this podcast into something amazing, something impactful that will create lasting memories on this journey. If you want to contact me, please send me an email to paul@iwpk.co.za. If you want to be on the couch for an interview, please send me an email. Finally, congratulate yourself for making the choice to live a more intentional life, to be the architect of your life, your success, and not just letting life happen to you. May the rest of your week be an amazing, intentional journey. Thank you.